The girl says to the billionaire, "Sir, why did you secretly pay my mother's hospital bills? Have you ever wondered how a single act of kindness can change someone's life forever?" Imagine this: a young woman, barely in her 20s, clutching a hospital bill so large, it feels like the weight of the world is resting on her shoulders. She's exhausted, working double shifts at a diner and a bookstore just to keep her head above water. Her mother, who has spent decades teaching kindergarten and shaping young minds, lies recovering from emergency heart surgery. The debt is astronomical, almost insurmountable. But then something unbelievable happens. One day, that crushing burden disappears, as if by magic. Paid in full, anonymous, no explanation. Now imagine standing face to face with one of the wealthiest men in your city, asking him directly, "Sir, why did you secretly pay my mother's hospital bills?" This isn't fiction. This is a story about real people, raw emotions, and the ripple effects of compassion. Meet Emma Reynolds, a hard-working, resilient young woman, caught between gratitude and confusion. Her life takes an unexpected turn when she discovers that Alexander Reed, a billionaire CEO known for his philanthropy and business empire, is behind the mysterious payment. But here's the twist: they've never met before, or so she thinks. As Emma digs deeper into the mystery, she uncovers layers of connection that stretch back decades, long before she was even born. It all ties back to her mother, Catherine Reynolds, whose quiet acts of kindness once saved a troubled teenager named Alex. That teenager grew up to become Alexander Reed, the man now standing in front of her, holding answers she never expected to find. The story begins on a crisp autumn afternoon, with fallen leaves crunching under Emma's worn-out sneakers. As she walks home from the hospital, she's dazed, still trying to process what the billing clerk told her earlier that day. Someone had paid off her mother's $287,000 medical bill. Who could have done such a thing? And more importantly, why? The questions swirl in her mind like storm clouds, refusing to settle. At first glance, Emma seems ordinary. A struggling daughter doing everything she can to support her family. But there's something extraordinary about her determination. You'll root for her because we've all been there, fighting battles bigger than ourselves, hoping for a miracle. On the other side of this equation stands Alexander Reed, a man whose name adorns half the buildings downtown. He's not just any billionaire. He's someone who understands struggle firsthand. Beneath his tailored suits and commanding presence lies a past marked by homelessness, foster care, and despair. Years ago, when he was just a boy, teetering on the edge of self-destruction, a kind-hearted volunteer at a youth center saw potential in him. That volunteer was none other than Emma's mother, Catherine. Their paths crossed briefly, yet those moments left an indelible mark on Alexander's life. Decades later, he's built an empire, but the memory of Catherine's kindness has stayed with him, fueling his desire to give back. When fate brings them together again through Emma, Alexander sees an opportunity, not just to repay a debt, but to honor the woman who changed his life. As Emma pieces together the puzzle, she finds herself walking into Alexander's glass tower office. Heart pounding, unsure of what to expect. The air crackles with tension as they sit across from each other, miles apart in terms of wealth and status. Yet connected by threads of history, neither fully understands yet. "Did you pay my mother's hospital bills?" Emma asks, her voice steady despite the whirlwind inside her. Alexander's response is measured, revealing only fragments of the truth. He speaks of gratitude, of wanting to help without expecting anything in return. But Emma senses there's more beneath the surface. There's a vulnerability in his eyes that hints at secrets waiting to be uncovered. What unfolds next is a journey filled with revelations, both beautiful and heartbreaking. Through flashbacks and conversations, we learn about Catherine's early years volunteering at Oak Ridge Youth Center while pursuing her dream of becoming a teacher. We see glimpses of a teenage Alexander, defiant, angry, and lost, until Catherine steps in, offering not just food and guidance, but belief in a future he couldn't envision for himself. These memories paint a vivid picture of two lives intertwined long before either character realized it. They also raise new questions. Why didn't Catherine ever mention knowing Alexander? How will Emma navigate her growing feelings for a man who holds so much power over her family's fate? Amidst these discoveries, the story explores themes that resonate deeply with all of us: the transformative power of kindness, the complexity of human connections, and the idea that our actions often echo far beyond what we can see. It's easy to dismiss small gestures, a warm meal, a listening ear, as insignificant, but this narrative reminds us that even the tiniest seeds of compassion can grow into something extraordinary. For Emma, learning about her mother's impact on Alexander forces her to reflect on her own values and aspirations. It challenges her to confront fears, doubts, and insecurities, ultimately pushing her toward growth she never imagined possible. But just as things start falling into place, another complication arises. A phone call from the hospital delivers news that threatens to shatter the fragile stability Emma and her mother have worked so hard to rebuild. Suddenly, the stakes are higher than ever, and Alexander's role in their lives becomes even more critical. His promise to ensure Catherine receives the best care possible feels like both a blessing and a burden. Emma grapples with conflicting emotions: gratitude for his generosity, frustration at feeling indebted, and a growing attraction she can no longer ignore. Will she let down her guard and trust him completely? Or will pride and fear keep her from embracing the possibilities unfolding before her? By the time Emma sits beside her mother one evening, recounting the day's events, the tension reaches its peak. Catherine listens intently, her expression shifting from surprise to understanding. Then she drops a bombshell. She remembers Alexander, not as the powerful CEO he is today, but as the lanky teenager she once mentored. This revelation opens doors to even more questions, leaving viewers eager to know how these three lives will continue to intersect. The final scene ends with Emma staring at Alexander's business card, turning it over in her hands. On the back, he's written a message that makes her heart skip a beat. Your mother once told me that kindness is never wasted, even when it seems forgotten. As the screen fades to black, the audience is left hanging, desperate to know what happens next. This introduction sets the stage for a heartfelt exploration of love, legacy, and the enduring power of human connection. It invites viewers to step into Emma's shoes, feel her struggles, and celebrate her triumphs. Along the way, they'll meet unforgettable characters whose journeys remind us that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create ripples that span lifetimes. So stay tuned, because the next chapter promises twists, turns, and moments that will tug at your heartstrings. As Emma processed everything Alexander had shared, her mind raced with questions. How could two lives be so intricately connected across decades without either person realizing it? Her mother's quiet acts of kindness, things Emma had always taken for granted, had set off a chain reaction that ultimately led to this moment. But there was still something unsettled in her chest, a lingering tension she couldn't quite name. Was it gratitude or obligation admiration, or mistrust. The line between them felt razor thin. Over the next few weeks, Emma threw herself into her new role at the foundation. It wasn't just a job. It was a chance to honor her mother's legacy while helping others, like her family, who faced financial hardship and despair. Yet every time Alexander walked into the office, his presence stirred emotions she didn't know how to handle. He was professional, but warm. Supportive, yet distant, when he needed to be. Their interactions were layered with unspoken feelings, as if both were waiting for permission to cross an invisible boundary. Emma told herself it was wrong to feel anything more than appreciation toward him, especially since he'd done so much for her and her mother. But the way he looked at her sometimes, with those piercing grey eyes, made her heart skip beats she couldn't control. Meanwhile, Catherine seemed to bloom under Alexander's care. His generosity extended beyond paying medical bills. He ensured she had access to the best cardiologists, physical therapists, and even arranged for home visits when necessary. To Emma, it felt almost surreal how quickly their lives had transformed from chaos to stability. Yet beneath the surface, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were building their newfound peace on shifting sands. What if Alexander changed his mind? What if someone found out about his involvement and judged them harshly? These fears gnawed at her during sleepless nights, even as she tried to focus on the positives. One evening, after another long day at work, Emma sat beside her mother, flipping through old photo albums Catherine had insisted on showing her. "Look," Catherine said, pointing to a faded picture of herself, standing outside the youth center, surrounded by teenagers. "That's Alex right there." Emma squinted at the lanky boy in the corner, his arms crossed defensively, his expression guarded. It was hard to reconcile that image with the confident billionaire CEO sitting across from her in board meetings now. He was so angry back then, Catherine mused aloud. But there was something else too, a spark, like he knew he was destined for greatness. Emma frowned. "Why didn't you ever tell me about him before?" she asked softly. Catherine hesitated, her fingers tracing the edge of the photograph. "I suppose I thought it was ancient history. When I met him again earlier this year, briefly, at the hospital donor recognition event, I barely recognized him. And honestly, I never imagined our paths would cross again like this." She paused, looking at Emma intently. "Do you trust him?" The question caught Emma off guard. Trust wasn't something she'd dared to think about explicitly. I don't know," she admitted finally. "He's done so much for us, Mom. More than anyone should have to do. But sometimes, it feels like we're living in a dream we might wake up from at any moment." Catherine nodded slowly, understanding, flickering in her eyes. Life has a funny way of testing us when things seem too good to be true. But remember this: kindness doesn't come with strings attached. Not real kindness anyway. Despite her mother's reassurance, Emma couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease. Things came to a head one afternoon when she overheard a conversation between Alexander and his assistant, Claire. They were discussing legal documents related to a large donation earmarked for cardiovascular research. At first, Emma assumed it was business as usual, until she heard her name mentioned. Her stomach tightened as snippets of their hushed voices drifted toward her. "Reynolds case? Contingency plans? Ensure confidentiality?" Her pulse quickened. Contingency plans. Confidentiality. What exactly was Alexander hiding? Part of her wanted to march into his office and demand answers, but fear held her back. Instead, she retreated to her desk, pretending not to have heard anything. That night, she lay awake, replaying the fragments of the conversation in her mind. Was Alexander planning something behind the scenes? Or was she letting paranoia get the better of her? The turning point came unexpectedly. A few days later, Alexander invited Emma to accompany him to a charity gala hosted by Reed Enterprises. It was a formal event honoring philanthropists and community leaders, and Emma initially declined, citing discomfort with being in the spotlight, but Alexander insisted, his tone unusually gentle. "You deserve to be recognized for your work," he said. "Besides, I'd like everyone to see what makes this foundation special. You." Reluctantly, Emma agreed. On the night of the gala, she stood beside Alexander as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Dressed in a simple yet elegant gown, borrowed from Lily, she felt out of place among the glittering crowd. But as Alexander introduced her to influential figures in the city, praising her dedication and vision, something shifted inside her. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe she belonged here. That maybe she wasn't just a beneficiary of Alexander's generosity, but a partner in creating something meaningful. Yet, the evening took a dramatic turn when an unexpected guest arrived. An elderly man approached their table, his face pale with anger. "Alexander Reed!" he spat, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "How dare you use your wealth to manipulate people's lives?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd as all eyes turned toward them. Emma froze, unsure whether to intervene or step away. Alexander's expression remained calm, though his jaw tightened slightly. "Mr. Harper," he replied evenly, "I'm not sure what grievances you think you have against me, but perhaps we can discuss this privately." "No," Harper snapped. "Let everyone hear the truth. You swoop in, throwing money around like some savior. But what happens when you lose interest? What happens when these people are left worse off than before?" Emma's heart sank. Were these accusations true? Had Alexander's actions truly been altruistic? Or was there a darker motive lurking beneath the surface? As whispers spread through the room, she realized the stakes were higher than she'd ever imagined. Whatever happened next would define not only their relationship, but also the future of everything they'd worked so hard to build together. Emma's heart raced as she processed everything Alexander had revealed. The journal, the photographs, the promises made between their mothers decades ago. It all felt like pieces of a puzzle, finally coming together, but the weight of it was almost too much to bear. "So, my mother knew yours before you ever ended up at the youth center?" she asked softly, her voice trembling with disbelief. Alexander nodded, his expression a mix of awe and vulnerability. "It's more than just knowing each other, Emma. Your mother promised mine that if anything happened to her, she'd look out for me. And years later, she did exactly that. Just as my mother hoped." The realization hit Emma like a tidal wave. Their lives weren't connected by random acts of kindness or coincidence. They were bound by something deeper, something intentional. Her mother's compassion wasn't just an isolated thread in their story. It was the foundation that tied them together across generations. As Emma sat there, staring at the worn leather journal on her desk, tears welled up in her eyes. "All this time," she whispered, "I thought Mom was just being kind because it was who she was. But she was fulfilling a promise she didn't even remember making." Alexander reached across the desk, his hand covering hers. His touch was warm, grounding her amidst the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. "Your mother saved me in ways I can never repay," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She gave me hope when I had none, belief when I couldn't believe in myself. And now, finding you, it feels like the final piece of that promise is falling into place." Emma looked at him, her chest tightening with a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something else she hadn't fully acknowledged until now: love. For weeks she'd fought against the growing feelings she had for Alexander, telling herself it was impossible, inappropriate. But sitting here, holding his hand, hearing the depth of his sincerity, she realized how wrong she'd been. This wasn't about obligation or charity. It was about two people brought together by fate, bound by shared history, and drawn to each other in a way neither could deny. The next few days passed in a blur. Emma threw herself into her work at the foundation, channeling her emotions into creating opportunities for others who needed help the most. Yet every interaction with Alexander carried an undercurrent of unspoken tension, a quiet acknowledgement of what lay between them. Finally, one evening after a long day of meetings, Alexander invited her to join him on the rooftop garden of Reed Enterprises. The city lights stretched out below them, glittering like stars scattered across the horizon. "I need to say something," Alexander began, his tone serious but gentle. "When I first saw your name on the hospital donor list, I thought it was fate giving me a chance to repay your mother. But now," he paused, searching her face, "now I realize it wasn't just about repaying a debt. It was about finding you, Emma. You've changed my life in ways I didn't think were possible." Anymore. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to speak, to tell him how she felt, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she simply nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. Alexander stepped closer, his gaze steady and unwavering. "I know, we've both been through so much, and maybe it's too soon to say this, but I can't imagine my future without you in it. Not just as someone I admire, but as someone I love." The confession hung in the air, raw and honest. Emma felt her heart swell, her doubts melting away in the warmth of his words. "I feel the same way," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm scared, Alexander. Scared of losing myself. Scared of depending on someone again after everything we've been through." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears streaming down her cheeks. "You'll never lose yourself with me, Emma. We'll face whatever comes next together. That's what love is. Choosing to stand beside someone, no matter what." In that moment, standing beneath the vast expanse of the night sky, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. The struggles they'd faced, the financial burdens, the secrets, the fears, all seemed smaller somehow, overshadowed by the strength of their connection. They weren't just two individuals anymore. They were partners, united by a legacy of kindness and resilience. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship deepened, rooted in mutual respect and shared purpose. Emma completed her degree with the support of the Foundation's tuition assistance program, while Alexander continued expanding its reach, ensuring that countless others benefited from the same opportunities he'd once been given. Catherine, now stronger and healthier, watched with pride as her daughter found happiness alongside the man whose life she'd unknowingly shaped so many years ago. One crisp autumn afternoon, nearly a year after that fateful day at the hospital, Emma stood beside Alexander on the steps of the newly renovated Oak Ridge Youth Center. The building gleamed with fresh paint and modern upgrades, a testament to the power of generosity and vision. Inside, dozens of teenagers laughed and learned, their futures bright with possibility. Standing there, hand in hand, Emma and Alexander reflected on how far they'd come, not just as individuals, but as part of something greater than themselves. "Do you ever wonder," Emma asked softly, leaning into him, "if our parents somehow planned all of this? My mum helping yours, then you ending up at the youth center, and now us." Alexander smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I don't think they planned it. but I do believe they trusted in the ripple effect of kindness. One act of compassion set off a chain reaction that changed both our lives and countless others along the way. Emma nodded, feeling a surge of gratitude for the women who had paved the path they now walked together. Kindness really does travel farther than we can see, she murmured, echoing her mother's words from so many years ago. As they turned to leave, the golden hues of sunset bathed the city in a warm glow, symbolizing new beginnings and endless possibilities. Emma knew their journey wasn't perfect, nor would it always be easy, but surrounded by love, purpose, and the enduring legacy of those who came before them, she felt ready to embrace whatever the future held. After all, sometimes the smallest seeds of kindness grow into the most beautiful stories of all.